It is my honor to come up and walk through this panel. This is the 5th time I've been able to do this. Those of us that work in the private sector in this city sometimes get a little bit frustrated about what we can't do. And today what I love about this panel is we're going to show what we can do. The gentlemen that are up here on the stage with me are some of Ottawa's finest city builders. We're going to hear from each of them about some very important projects in the city. So I look forward to that. I am Jeff Westeinda from, well, I do a lot of things, but I've been up a couple of times to talk about the ZB project, and I was asked just to give a very quick update on ZB. I think I went, there we go. So high-level stats, for those of you that have not been to ZB lately, get down there. I'll go rapid fire through what we've been up to. 10 years ago we announced the project. 8 years ago we did our first sod turning, and we've been moving. We went through 2 floods, bridge closure for 2 years, a pandemic, and the team at ZB continues to deliver. So 34 acres spanning the provincial border. We like to pick nice, easy projects, so this was one of them. One of the things I'm most proud of is that we are a zero carbon community. I know it says carbon neutral, but we're heating and cooling all of our buildings with no carbon at all, which a shout out to a gentleman by the name of Scott DeMarc. Those of you that know him, the man is a genius for making that happen. Just a very quick update. We launched a number of buildings in the last 12 months. This is a 16-story tower in Quebec, rental. Another rental is its neighbor, and both of them we're really happy to see. As everyone knows, a lot of demand for housing right now, so these ones are being well received. We've got some great spaces if anyone's ever looking for beautiful places in Ottawa. This is the Atrium building, old E.B. Eddy mill site that is available. In Ontario, we announced, or we've just completed a building, 22 stories. This is a co-living building, so it's pretty neat. And actually an important partner in here is Ottawa Community Housing, has 2 floors for affordable rentals. Some commercial spaces. This building came to market about 8 months ago. We have a co-working space in this building. This is the federal government is the head tenant in this building. But then one of the things that we would love for people to come down and take a look at is the public spaces. This is Wassa ZB Plaza. It is on the Quebec side, a park that is tight up against the Ottawa River, down at river level. Definitely worth going for a visit. Pangishimo Park, which means Sunset Park. In Algonquin on the Ontario side, and beside this one, our partners at Hydro Ottawa have a beautiful park as well. So I highly recommend go for a walk, take your bike, come down and take a look at what we've been doing. This is Tassassini. This is actually the park. Sorry, I jumped the gun here. This is the park that's on the Quebec side, in the floodplain, by the way. So it is closed in the spring, but when the water recedes, it is absolutely gorgeous. And then what we like to call an extension of ZB. Alain, I'm not sure if I should say this, but an extension of ZB, 600 new units going up at LaBretton Flats. The same team that's doing ZB is working on these ones. So that just a quick update on the ZB project that I wanted to pass along, and then I want to get to the meat of this, which is our speakers. So our first speaker, Alain Miguelez, has forgotten more about planning than most people will ever know in this city. Has worn a number of hats during his career, and has a very simple job, which is to be sure that Ottawa is a world-class capital city. And he's up here to talk a little bit about some of the work the NCC has been doing. Over to you, Alain.
Thanks very much, Jeff. Thanks very much. Merci tout le monde. Pleasure to be here. I'm going to keep my remarks to one of the projects which we feel is important. It's the core area sector plan. The NCC is the long-term planner of the capital, so we have a 50-year plan called the Plan for Canada's Capital, but underneath that we have a series of plans that are for each of the major areas where there's federal land. There's a Greenbelt Master Plan, there's a Gatineau Park Master Plan, and there's a core area master plan because the federal government actually owns quite a bit of land in the downtown core. The way we would like to communicate this is that the NCC understands the moment that we're in for downtown. We think that this is a great opportunity to talk about the future of downtown, and we want to be a partner to make sure that the cities of Ottawa and Gatineau can leverage their status as nation's capital to advance economic development, to advance destination development, to advance cultural development, and to advance international positioning. So this is the map of the area we're talking about. We're in the home stretch of an exercise that started about 2 years ago, so we're looking to wrap this up and finalize this in early next year. And there's been quite a few things that have been out in the public. I'm not going to stop on them too long, but we do have some guiding principles that I think help us focus what we want out of the core area. And I just want you to notice the second one, international presence. We want, again, to leverage our status as a G7 capital to build our image and to map our next steps. Now, as the federal planner, there's a few key themes. What do people want out of a capital city, and especially out of its downtown? And you've got them right there: democracy and meaning, beauty and majesty, sustainability, of course, but we've put some new emphasis on things like vibrancy and animation, tourism and local economy, and mobility and access. And we're starting as well from an old concept of, the old concept of town and crown, which for a long time was seen as, there's town and crown and never the twain shall meet. And I think we're in a different space now where, we're thinking of the capital as one and a single entity. We want the city to look like a capital, and we want the capital to look like a city. So the more we can blur those lines and the more we can integrate those concepts, I think the better off everybody will be. And the big moves, and they're meaningful, there's not many, but they mean a lot, turning towards the water, creating new places, and creating connections are some of the things that are starting to guide us in what's taking shape as a conceptual plan. So we still have the backbone of Confederation Boulevard that ties together all the major attractions of the nation's capital in the core on both sides of the river. And then we've got a number of layers like waterfront. So when we talk about turning toward the water, we want to understand how. We've got a lot of waterfronts. We've got the Ottawa River, we've got the canal, we've got the Rideau River, we've got creeks, we've got islands. Some waterfront is flat, some is cliff. So how do we get to the water? And more on that later. There's a lot of open space on which sit a lot of important buildings and sites. Those are the postcards of the capital. There's an urban fabric, so the streets and blocks of the cities and how they mesh together. And there's destinations. We know which ones exist, but which ones are next and where would they go? And there's streetscapes as well. So Confederation Boulevard is there, and it's an important piece. But how about the streets that lead up to it? And how do we all work together to make the whole thing coherent? And then you start to combine these layers together, and a whole bunch of possibilities start to open. So in our material that we're going to be sharing this spring and summer, we're identifying sectors where we want to try out some ideas. These are sectors and areas in most cases that are federally owned or where there's a federal interest, such as Confederation Boulevard. And we've already presented one across the river in Gatineau, which is Brewery Creek, Ruisseau de la Brasserie. It's like a mini LaBretton Flats in Hull. It was an industrial area that lost its industry and lost its factories over the years. It was contaminated. So if we decontaminate, we have an opportunity here to create kind of like a mini Rideau Canal in Hull with bars and restaurants that open up to the water, housing above, stores along the street, which is also a Rapibus lane, and a whole new promenade along the creek side, which would be like a mini Rideau Canal on the Hull side. And these are some of the renderings that we've presented to the city of Gatineau and to the public already on the Gatineau side of things. There's Lady Grey Drive, and who here can place Lady Grey Drive on the map? Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4 hands maybe. It's a secret little street that nobody knows exists, but it's the street that is right between Sussex and the water on a cliff. And so, actually, if you look back in history, there used to be boat launches there and wharves and, again, a lot of industry. There were also people's homes there. But it got cut off by McDonald-Cartier Bridge in the 60s on one side and by the National Gallery on the other side in the 80s. So it's orphaned. You can still get to it from Sussex. And we're looking at it from the opportunity of the ESAP project, the energy project that our colleagues at PSPC are doing, to reimagine it as a way to pull the biowork market toward the water through that street. So one of the things that we're looking at is to bring people from Bruyere Street, between the Royal Mint and the former War Museum, down to Lady Grey Drive with this ramp and staircase, and then create places for people to hang out, lookouts, still have room for the trucks to deliver to the National Gallery. And then at the very end of it, we're looking at lands that the NCC owns right by the Ottawa Rowing Club. And you know when people go to Europe and they go to waterfront cities and they take pictures of waterfronts and usually they look like this? Why don't we do this here? That's the question we want to ask. And just to continue, just along, so we have a Rideau to Rideau initiative, which is Rideau Canal to Rideau Falls. And then you get to the end of Confederation Boulevard, which is Rideau Hall. And there's these 3 blocks which maybe could start to congeal as a termination point for Confederation Boulevard, and to give a little extra to that whole area for people and tourists to have a little more to do after touring Rideau Hall, explore the neighborhood, and get into the city. Again, on the Gatineau side, there's the Kruger factory site. It is on a lease. There are jobs there, and we will respect the lease. But in the context of a long-term plan, what can we start to think about in terms of reusing that land? And there is a beautiful view if you open Hôtel de Ville Street toward Parliament. And there's enough land there for city blocks that would contribute housing and give a second side, maybe with activity, to Laurier, and still have green space along the water to connect and have a continuous waterfront. And we're looking at Jacques Cartier Park South as well in the context of the Alexander Bridge replacement. How can we configure that park to really be an attraction and be something that complements the Museum of History and the old convent that is also just next to it, that's also an NCC property. And then there's a number of these. One that we're trying out a few ideas on is the Cliff Street parking lot that is on the floodplain. But the new LGBT monument is about to break ground on it, and right next to it is this parking lot. What can we imagine there to complement that and to feed some activity to, again, those areas that are off the radar, off the beaten path, but are so well positioned? So our next steps are continuing to develop. There's a lot more of these ideas we want to talk about, so please talk to us. And we want to hear from you if you have ideas of things that you'd like to see us talk about in the plan for the core. We're going to have public consultations this summer, but in the meantime, we're all ears, and we'd love to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Alain. I was particularly happy to see vibrancy, animation, tourism, and focus on the waterfront. Le projet Le Ruisseau Brasserie pour la ville de Gatineau, c'est tellement important pour le centre de ville de Gatineau. So really happy to see the NCC taking a leadership role in those kinds of things. An incredibly important job. The one memory I would like for all the NCC people to remember here is the applause you got when we talked about animating our waterfront. That would be fantastic. So our next speaker literally is the strand that connects so many important projects in Ottawa. Michael Morgan, the director of LRT Phase 2. Michael.
Good to be here. It's one of the few times where, I'm glad to say I'm in LRT and I'm not in the policy or the planning department, So they took a bit of heat, but my colleagues are here and they're the ones who kind of set me up for success with this plan. This is the work. There's maybe one abstract slide. This is the abstract slide, and then the rest of it is real. I'm connecting the dots between everybody sitting at this table. This map, this is a 15-year, $7 billion build-out of an LRT system. It's not for the faint of heart. Now, if we just think about, stage one, take pieces on their own, yeah, it's painful and it's not pretty, but when we look at 15 years, $7 billion, $500 million a year, almost $2 million a day of construction work in the city. So everywhere, just about, this is probably the only place in the city where I'm not working. So we're going to get and show you, this is the extension, this is the number of, if you drive down to Orleans, 5 stations, the track is built, the catenary is going in, there will be trains running to trim by the end of this year. So you will be on the highway and you will see a train traveling beside you by the end of this year on that segment of the track. The west extension is coming later. We're going to actually truck a vehicle out to the west and start testing from the west back to the core. And then the Trillium line, if you're anywhere near the Trillium line, you're seeing trains every day. They just started on Saturdays this past weekend. So this is very much a real project. Bayview Station, so I'm just going to, I only have 5 minutes, so I can only give you a highlight of some of the spots, but Bayview Station, in the distance, you see the new William Commanda Bridge. Everywhere we go with the new train station, we're adding connectivity, we're making sure we're connected to the community, we're providing ease of access. You see the pedestrian bridge there, connection to the future development. You'll be able to walk right onto the Bayview Station from that bridge. Further down, OCH, Ottawa Community Housing, has already broken ground. They're on the right-hand side there. There's development applications in for the left. This is going to be a beautiful new station in the core of the city. Dow's Lake Station, now this is where it starts to really get, this is where it's really messy in terms of the construction. This is where, you see the hospital project, is basically impeding on my train project. And right in the middle, you see my little train, and you see, the big cranes all around the train. And so I know that, there's a lot of discussion around kind of working around transit systems, around, a lot of times developers will come to us and we'll talk to them about getting, crane permits. And this is why. This is why when you're wanting to work next to our corridor, this is the exact example of why you need to kind of come and talk to us so we can help you, so we can keep the train running, we can allow construction to continue. So a great project, they've been a great partner, and I'm looking forward to that being finished so we can just focus on the trains. Further south, Limebank Station, again, this is a partnership with the province and local developer funding the extra extension all the way out to Limebank. We started out there basically in a field, but there is a wave of homes that are coming. You can already see it. If you just look over the last 5 years, they're all coming. This whole area is going to be developed. So a great example of building out the network before the houses come into town. Airport Station, Airport again, a fabulous partner. They built out their piece of the station to meet with our train station. We now have trains going as part of testing to that station every day. This is going to be a fantastic new addition to the system, a connection to the airport, transfer at South Keys. Absolutely wonderful opportunity for people to get on transit, use it the moment they get off the airplane. And then I'm just going to end, there's basically 3 big photos here, all to do with our interface with the NCC. So it's a little difficult to tell, but basically in the center of that photo is a major bus transit way, is a major new LRT system, is a creek, and a series of pathways. And so now, if you go through that area, it is absolutely a disaster zone. It is a construction zone. It is full on, we've had to take out trees and orchards and things. We're going to start putting it back together. And we're going to take out the bus transit way, and we're going to replant it. And working with the NCC, this is going to be restored as a beautiful new park. And so the outcome, after we're done in this area, it's going to be absolutely phenomenal. The next area is along the parkway. So this is the area where essentially you can see the portal to the tunnel. We're dropping into a tunnel, 2.5 kilometer tunnel that goes all the way up down Richmond Road and then pops out the other side. So the tunnel, there's less than 100 meters to go on the tunnel. So after this, it's like full bore ahead with building rail, getting trains in there, putting that system into service. The other thing you see in this area as well, it's very gray. And working with the NCC, what we're going to do is we're going to actually move that roadway away from the river and closer to over the tunnel, closer to the homes. We're going to create that extra space, give it back to the community, give back to the shoreline of the river back so it's available for use. Again, taking what's gray today and turning it green in the future. Then the last one, there's a couple of projects in here which are really interesting. Obviously, we talked about the development. You heard about that story. Right in the middle is our Pimisi Station from stage 1, but then another city project kind of in the distance. The green building there is the new library. So everywhere you go with this LRT project, there's a secondary project. There's some other activity. There's some other building. It's absolutely unlocking the city and making it real, making it easy for people to get around. We're going to connect all the universities. We're going to connect all the shopping centers. We're going to connect the downtown to all the remote areas. This area, 10 to 15 years, will absolutely be full. Full of what? I don't know, but it will be full. And so we look forward to that. Thank you very much.
It wasn't planned to have Mark Laroche from the airport sitting between you and Cameron from the hospital, but I think based on the construction site there, maybe it's good there's some separation between you guys for today. But Michael, literally you are connecting so many of the key parts of our city. You're doing Herculean work, and thank you for that on behalf of the folks from the City of Ottawa here. So our next speaker, so we just heard how rail is connecting our city. Our next speaker connects our city to the rest of the world. I have often thought of Mark over the course of the last 5 years. I think as a CEO, you couldn't ask for a tougher thing to go through, and we are so fortunate that you've had the tenacity that you have. You've been attracting all the new airlines. I know I no longer have to drive to Montreal to get out of the city to all sorts of different places thanks to you. So you get a big hug from me, my friend. Mark Laroche from the Ottawa Airport Authority.
So it's nice to be sitting between Michael and Cameron, because those are the billionaire projects. I'm the millionaire projects. I'm not at the same level, but great projects. Bon après-midi, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be back to the City Building Summit to provide an update on airport and some of the exciting things that have happened since we last talked. In 2022, I was very focused on YOW's recovery. I would now say that we have recovered, but we're different. I'll spend the next few minutes telling you how we've changed. I'll update you on our larger projects and discuss what we have planned for the next few years, including exciting developments on our efforts to become a hub in 5 minutes. We hit our target of 4 million passengers in 2023, 4.1 to be exact. We were able to get back to some capital projects and finish the year with net earnings of $10.8 million today. Recall that we had to borrow $100 million to keep the lights on. Having positive earnings will allow us to repay the debt within 10 years, but also to reinvest in our airport. Our route map isn't quite what it was, but we're getting there. You'll notice many sunshine destinations and leisure markets on this map. This is reflective of our changing passenger profile, which I speak to shortly. We will still be very focused on our ESG and sustainability goals, and are actively working to meet our net zero challenge commitment of carbon neutrality for our operations by 2040 or earlier. We are working with Hydro Ottawa and other partners to capitalize on exciting opportunities at the airport, and I'll talk to you more later. There's a new airline in town. Un de nos faits d'armes en 2023 a été l'ajout d'un vol d'Air France sans escale à Paris-Charles de Gaulle. Le vol a débuté en juin dernier. The flight has been doing extremely well since day one. So well, in fact, the airline has upgauged its aircraft twice and will be going to Delhi in June. As I mentioned, our market has changed. Business travel has diminished, and leisure travel is taking a larger share of total air travel in our region. We estimate that our split is now 20% business and 80% leisure. This shift from 40-60% share is having a distinct impact on our infrastructure and facilities, and calls for different amenities for the growing leisure travel. 2 years ago, I told you about our YOW Plus Terminal Enhancement Program. It has progressed significantly. Concession renewals are all well underway and advancing. The LRT station is done, and the Alt Hotel is moving forward. In more recent news, we opened a new iStore boutique, No Boundaries, in Maison de la Presse in 2022. Last summer, we opened our big rig in the Canal Market Food Hall, featuring local brands like La Bottega and Bridgehead Coffee. I'm pleased to say that our passengers are really happy with these changes, and the program is exceeding revenue expectations, which is always good. Next phase includes a new and expanded Starbucks close to where it's currently located in the domestic hold room, along with a new relay store this year. The existing Darcy McGee's will be converted, and we'll have a new Zach's Diner in 2025. And there's a new Bridgehead and Relay store currently under construction and arrivals. Finally, in 2025 or so, the restaurant in the transborder hold room will be transformed. So we're getting there. Construction on our LRT Airport Terminal Station is complete and awaiting the city's final testing of the Trillium Line Airport Spur. We look forward to that. We anticipate, and I'm not allowed to give a date because they don't tell me a date, but we anticipate the official opening is going to be this summer because I keep seeing those trains being tested. Just ask Michael for a date. Yeah. The new Alt Hotel has started construction last fall. Kudos to the team at Germain for persevering and making the project work. It will have the important amenities passengers want and expect in the terminal connected to the hotel. In 2022, at the City-Building Summit, I told you about the Taxi Romeo project, and I teased that there was an important tenant project in the works. Of course, it was the Porter Hangar development, which we announced a few months later. Taxiway Romeo opens the door for more airside development and great opportunities for YOW, and we are still reserving space for federal government needs. If Porter seems to be a common theme at YOW these days, it is. Porter has become a critical partner and is central to some of our plans going forward. They will be our largest carrier come summer with 15 destinations. If you attended the Mayor's Breakfast a few weeks ago, you could have heard the CEO, Michael Deleuze, talk about the importance of YOW and our status as the most important hub for their new E195 E2 jets. And yes, he said the magic word, hub. And with a maintenance, with a maintenance hangar of 150,000 square foot and a crew base, YOW is indeed an important partner. So, at our overall growth with Porter's anticipation expansion, and we have capacity constraints on the horizon. We have been working over the past year to optimize gating and other operational requirements to meet changing fleet configurations, as well as using remote stands and busing to accommodate growing seasonal charters. We currently have studies underway to plan for that expansion. This will be a multi-year effort that will impact our operations for years to come. Expect to hear more on our expansion plan within 12 to 18 months. As mentioned previously, YOW is committed to achieve net zero by 2040 for our operations. Since 2022, we have been working with Hydro Ottawa on several projects, one of them being the viability of a large solar farm project. Our property has over 500 acres of high potential land. This land is mostly unsuitable for many other types of development because of noise from low-flying aircraft and obvious height restrictions. Furthermore, these lands are not serviced by water and sewer and would not be for decades. These lands are flat, have clear skies, with minimal shading from surrounding buildings and trees. Furthermore, they are close to power lines, which makes them more attractive for the generation of sustainable electricity from solar. Solar energy production will help Ontario decarbonize its electricity grid. Our preliminary estimate is that our 500 acres could generate 150 megawatt hours annually by building a 100 megawatt capacity solar array. Based on similar sized projects, we estimate this would require around 250,000 solar panels. The energy produced by this large solar generation plant could provide the equivalent sustainable electricity required by over 20,000 households. This project has many steps before it can break ground. We are at the beginning of a competitive process that, with the right partners and the support of the community, a very attractive proposal for the provincial regulator can be tabled in order to secure a power purchase agreement from the Ontario Provincial Independent Electricity System Operator. In closing, it's an exciting time at YOW. We are growing, but we still have our eyes focused on our passengers, their experience, and our ESG and sustainability goals. My final ask is the same as always. Please include YOW in your air travel plans. Commencez et terminez vos vols à notre bel aéroport. Merci. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you to you and your team for the work that you've done with the Ottawa Airport. It is such an important link from this region, so important for attracting businesses here and for our businesses. I'm particularly happy to see the focus on clean energy. And another kudos I'll throw to you is it's so nice to be in the airport and see so many local brands, Bridgehead, Zach's, Big Rig. And when you travel through many other airports, you see all the usual international chains. So well, good for you for attracting those brands to the airport. Our next project, I call Cam a magician, or the team at the hospital magician. I think, like many people in here, I've had the unfortunate experience of having to visit the hospital for reasons I'd rather not have been there for, and yet the team at the hospital always seems to turn it around, and you leave with a smile on your face. And the work that the hospital does is incredibly important, and this next project, I think, is going to really help up the game for us here in Ottawa. So Cameron Love, CEO of the Ottawa Hospital.
So good afternoon, everyone. So I want to talk, I'm going to give you a little snapshot of what we're doing with the project, but I first want to talk a little bit around the importance of the project. And while it's a great construction project, I think the reality is, and we've seen this across the globe coming out of the pandemic, is healthcare was hit pretty hard. And I think more so than ever, our biggest challenge is access to care. Longer wait times, whether it's not enough primary care docs, not enough long-term care beds, not enough hospital capacity. And so as we build this, what we are really focused on is how we reshape healthcare for this community for the next 20, 30, 40, 50, 70 years. And to that extent, the Civic is obviously a major piece to this, but it's one of about 10 pieces that we're trying to build. And it's really focused on trying to build a new system of healthcare. And so while we're building and plans, which I'll walk you through in a second for the new Civic, we're also building surgical centers in the community. We've got approval to build 2 long-term care homes. We've got an entire primary care strategy to try and grow primary care in this community. We're working closely with Inner City Health in terms of how we provide health care to those that are homeless in the downtown core. We've got lots of partnerships around the region. We run 21 sites across the region now as regional programs, whether it's cancer, dialysis, or other diseases. And so a big chunk of this is really around building capacity for the future. Because the one thing for sure that we've seen, and I don't think there's a country or a city that's exempt from this, is most major urban cities have a growing population, but more importantly, the growth rate above the age of 70 is quite significant. And unfortunately with that comes incidence of disease. And so what we're really trying to do is use this as a catalyst to build more and more capacity for healthcare to address this from a system perspective. I think the other thing that we've seen, we've recruited about 2,500 people over the last 3 years. As I look out the next 10 years, we probably need to double, if not triple that, of people we're recruiting into Ottawa. We have close partnerships with the universities, but the reality is we recruit people from all across the globe. Probably 25 to 30% of all physicians we recruit are from other countries. And part of that is to come to new infrastructure as well as what they're coming to as a city. And so when we talk about this being a large community project, those are the reasons why it's a large community project. We obviously focus on healthcare, but a big piece of this is how do we create this as a magnet organization that brings people in from across the world. A huge portion of what we have shifted in healthcare, and it seems to change about every 3 weeks, is what's happening with the digital experience. Everything that we're doing in development is focused around digital platforms, integrated electronic records, and now artificial intelligence. And so as this evolves over the course of the next probably 5-10 years, the pace by which change is occurring with artificial intelligence is staggering. What that requires is creating building infrastructure that's flexible that allows to evolve with that pace. And then the last piece I want to comment on, and I'll comment a little later on it, is probably for our organization, we have a lot of staff. We have about 17,000 staff. Healthcare and healthcare access for many people is a challenge and a concern, so is planetary health. And hospitals are a very significant component of what happens with waste within all communities. And so a big piece to what we're focused on is how do we create more of an environmentally friendly healthcare system going forward. So a little bit about the campus. It's about 2.5 million square feet in the first phase. It'll grow to about 4.5 million square feet over multiple phases, which I'll walk you through in a second. We will start with 641 private rooms. Hopefully many of you have not had to come and see us, but if you do today, you're probably going to have 1, 2, or 3 roommates. In terms of standard of care, this is probably the biggest change for the campus, where everything will have a private room, its own washroom. And what we've learned from the pandemic is private rooms are essential when you're dealing with infectious disease outbreaks. And so as we build infrastructure going forward, it will be all private room based. The other big piece to this, which is really important, is the boost this will provide into the economy. So you can see the $2 billion and the 4,000 jobs created. That's just during construction. And these numbers are 2.5, 3 years old. I think what we're going to see is even after we're done, as we grow our research profile, we have more and more private corporations in the healthcare industry that want to partner with us to innovate and also do more and more research. What that means is they want to set up more and more infrastructure within this community. So as we look forward, post-opening this infrastructure as well as the other sites we're building, the boost to the economy and the recruitment and the employment just continues to climb at a very significant rate year over year. And then obviously we heard about transit-oriented and safe for pedestrians and cyclists. Transit for hospitals is key. There is no other building in the community that has every form of transportation coming to it, ranging from bikes to walking to helicopters, police, ambulance, cars, you name it, it's coming into the organization. And so the idea going forward of having light rail built right into the campus is a huge benefit for us. Obviously, those that need emergency care are not coming by light rail, but a huge portion of visitors, families, and others will use light rail as it continues to extend east and west. So it's a very significant component for us as we talk about circulation within the campus. So to give you a snapshot of the major phases. So phase 1 is the parking garage. If you go down there today, it's completely under construction. That parking garage, to give you a size of scale, is bigger than the Rideau Centre, and it's one of the smaller pieces of the campus. And so it's a very significant infrastructure development. Phases 2 and 3, 2 is the central utility plant, so we're working closely in partnership with Hydro that will operate this utility plant for us. Hospitals have very complicated infrastructure when it comes to utilities, particularly mechanical. And so having a partner like Hydro Ottawa to help us think about how we green for the future and what we're doing for infrastructure of that magnitude has been great. Phase 3 is the big phase, that's the main hospital. And phases 4 and 5 are 2 research and innovation buildings that we're building down Carling. 1, 2, and 3, so 1's underway, 2 and 3 will start over the course of the next probably 15 months. So we've awarded to the JV, PCL and Ellis Don will be building these buildings, and we're in the final phase of design. So we've got at least a year of design, financial close, and then we'll be out to construction in 2026. The reason that timing is so critical is phase 1 will be done in fall 2025. There's about 2,000 to 3,000 workers that will be on site to build the main build. So you got to park them somewhere. So as we finish the parking garage, we will start the main building. And then phase 6, which is the final phase, is the Heart Institute. And the Heart Institute will be in a distant future, date not determined yet, but it's been completely built into the campus. So when you take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 that gets built, 1 to 5 over the next probably 6 to 7 years, it jumps to about 3.5 million square feet, and the Heart Institute will bring it to 4.5 million square feet. This is just a quick snapshot. You just saw another picture of it. It is going up very quickly. So this was April 9th. So we're well underway, on track to open next fall. And then on the top part where you see that mound of gravel, that's where the new hospital build will start as we head into 2026. And then this is the final piece. And I think the key with this that we've tried very hard to do is, while yes, it's a hospital, it's also part of a very significant urban center. So as we've done a lot of planning around green spaces, a lot of planning around access to the Arboretum, the Central Experimental Farm, lots of bike paths, loads of trees. And so that what you see in the middle on the top there, that's actually the top of the parking garage. It's completely greened and built into the Arboretum. So you've got pathways and walkways that filter through the entire campus. And then the main hospital on the top. So, you know, the reality is we've started this in 2004. It takes a long time to build a hospital in Canada. It's usually a 25-year cycle at a minimum. The good news is we're building this, and I think when I look forward of the opportunity we have to reshape healthcare, this is a huge catalyst within it, and quite honestly, as a community, as I look in the growth that we have, and it's a great community, we need to continue to expand healthcare, and so this is just an exciting time for us in this industry, but it's also an exciting time for the community, both economically and also from a healthcare perspective. Thanks for your time.
Cameron, I've had the benefit of seeing enough of the plans for the Ottawa Hospital to know that, as a developer, creating spaces and places really does change the way that you feel in them, and that's going to be a world-class center, help us attract world-class researchers and practitioners. So kudos to you and your team for making that happen. Thank you. Our next speaker, the CEO of the Ottawa Senators. I have memories of the first time that Cyril became the CEO of the Ottawa Senators, and the team went on a playoff run for about a decade. Now, no pressure, Cy, but if everyone has their phones, you might want to pull out your calendar. I have it on good authority that Cyril's going to come up and give us the date for June 2025 for the Stanley Cup Parade. Am I right? No, our next speaker, Cyril Leader, one of the most important brands in our city, the Ottawa Senators. If you travel around North America or the world, many people know Ottawa thanks to the Ottawa Senators. It's Cyril and his team that are making that happen. They've got some big plans for the team and for our city. So over to you, Cyril.
Thanks, Jeff. Good afternoon, everyone, and bonjour à tous. Before I get started, I know I'm on the clock here, so I'll get going, but I do have a few asks for our panelists because I've got them here and I've got the mic so I can do the asking. So I'll start with Cameron. The first two come from my wife. She texted me. So first, we got a daughter working in the medical industry in a hospital in the States. You can't get this thing built quick enough because we couldn't think of a better place for her to be working than in the largest teaching hospital in the country right here in our hometown. So let's get that thing going. And again, from my wife, Mark, direct to Paris is great, but what about Italy? Come on, let's go. We need direct to Italy. Let's go. And for me, Michael, phase 2 is going great. Let's get phase 3 started. We got to get this thing out to Canada, okay? We got to have the LRT in Canada. And Stittsville, of course, where I live in Canada. And Alain, I think you heard it from the crowd, more animation along the water, lots of bars, lots of restaurants, and lots of cafes, please. Okay. I'm not here to speak about that. As I said, I'm on the clock, and I do have the pleasure today to talk to you about a downtown, a major event center, what it could mean for the future of Canada's capital. And I say could mean because the other 4 presenters are talking about projects that are already underway and are real. Ours is something that's in the planning stages. We're not at their stages quite yet, but we hope to be, but we're not quite there yet. So I'm going to talk a bit about what would be the economic benefits and what would ensue, the activity that would ensue from a downtown event center. The event center, much like these other projects, would be a core piece of infrastructure here for our city, but it would also be a significant investment in our quality of life. I think we'd all agree new hospital would be fantastic for that. The work that the NCC is doing, the LRT is fundamental at the airport. An investment in a new downtown, a major event center would do the same thing for our quality of life here. And when done properly, it would be a transformative project that would help revitalize our downtown. We've seen what these event centers have done in other communities and other cities, what they've done to their downtowns. And probably the most striking example is what's happened in Detroit. It's not a place you would have gone downtown the last 30 years, but if you've been down there lately, it's a happening spot. And there's other examples that are closer to home. Our sister capital city in Washington has done a great job with their downtown, centered around an event center. And here in Canada, and Edmonton's probably the best example with their ice district and what's happened to the downtown in Edmonton since the Rogers Centre was built. The best cities have a number of things in common, but one of their biggest differentiators is they really make the effort to do city building. And that's what we're all here today to talk about. That's what these projects are all doing. That's what a downtown event center would be part of as well. It's about city building. It's about doing the right thing, taking the right steps at the right time to revitalize our downtown when we need it most. So as I said, I'm going to talk about some of the economic benefits here and the economic impact from a downtown center. First, sorry, got my slide out of order here. The overview is, thanks Jeff, good grab.
Hey, that second round draft pick.
The new center would replace obviously the Canadian Tire Center. The building now is almost 30 years old. By the time a new event center will be built, it'll be 35 years old. And the premise obviously is located downtown, and it would become an engine for revitalization for additional development. The project itself is massive. We'll talk about that in a minute. But what happens around the arena, around the event center, once it's started, is really where the magic happens. More hotels, more office space, more restaurants, more retail, apartments, condos, all take place once these projects get underway. And again, lots of examples of what this has done in places like we said, Edmonton, Detroit, and Washington, but also downtown Toronto, Columbus. There's many other examples of these facilities spurring on significant development. There is a site at LaBretton that's under contract with the NCC. The new ownership group took over in October. New management, myself included, inherited that agreement. We're working on that. There are some shortcomings in that agreement, but we're working on that now with the NCC. I was asked by Michael earlier today, how much of my time am I spending on the project? I'd say I should be spending about 80% of my time on it. I'm not yet, but we're working our way up there. But it is obviously the #1 file on our desks at the Senators. Certainly the senior executive team is working on this downtown arena project. Okay, here's the stuff on the economic impact. The size, I'll get the size first. The size is 800,000 square feet. The Edmonton Arena is 1 million square feet. We are going to right size ours for the Ottawa market. We think it should be about 800,000 square feet. Comparable projects in Edmonton and Calgary spent about $1.2 billion on the arena and the related infrastructure that goes around it. That's not on the ancillary development, that's just the arena itself. Parking, the road network needs upgrades, a community rink. So we think our development would be in that range, $1.2 to $1.5 billion. And as I said, there'd be significant ancillary development. These are the hotels, the condos, the apartments, the retail. Typically 3 to 5 times the project's cost or size. So you're talking about a $3 to $6 billion immediate project once the shovels get in the ground on the arena. Okay. And now we got the economic impact. Okay, it's about a $1.2 billion, as I said, on the arena itself, the event center. That's the gross domestic product. It's more than just economic numbers. There's jobs associated with this as well. 7,000 full-time jobs just in Ottawa, Gatineau for the construction of this project. It's a big, big project. University of Ottawa report we had done 10 years ago estimated the annual impact from operations about $200 million a year. We've had that revised recently, and the numbers now are about $300 million a year in economic impact from the annual operations from a downtown major event center. And the tourism spend is a big part of that with the arena and the hotel, various hotels in the area. You're going to see about $250 million a year in spend just on tourism spend from the arena and the hotels in the area. Okay. And I'm going to wrap up here because I know I'm between you and a few drinks, but I just want to say that in conclusion, the downtown event center has some impressive numbers. So it's a $1.2 billion gross domestic product impact. The arena itself and the ancillary development will spur another 3 to 5 times that in development. So again, $3 to $6 billion in development. Creates about 7,000 full-time jobs during the construction right here in Ottawa and Gatineau. And from an operations point of view, it's a $300 million annual impact. But I think the most impressive stat or number is what a downtown event center could do to revitalize our downtown, when we need it the most, right now. Okay, that's the biggest win. It clearly spur more investment, as I said, in hotels, restaurants, office space, retail space, apartments. That will all take place. And it'll bring more people downtown, get people using the LRT that maybe don't use it right now. And it'll mean more visitors coming to our city, and the visitors that are coming, it'll mean that they'll stay longer. And leave you with one last thought before I wrap up. It took Detroit about 30 years to come to the realization that they that they needed to invest in their downtown. They needed to invest in facilities like this to get people coming back downtown. And at the Senators, we know how important this is to the community. As I said, we're spending a lot of our effort and time on it right now, and they're looking to us for leadership to get this done. And we understand there's an urgency to act now to get this done when our downtown needs it the most. Thank you.
Mark, on the energy play, what was the motivation to look at, again, stepping away from business as usual?
Well, the opportunity was there with our land. There's very few projects that make sense to build around an airport, and a large solar farm definitely is one. And again, we're working with Hydro Ottawa also, and this will provide not only some clean energy to the province, because it would be going to the grid. It will. There's a portion of the project that I didn't speak to that would directly feed the terminal. So again, that will help us to get to carbon neutrality as quick as possible with our operations. We know that the industry is going to be under the gun to get to zero. Aircrafts, the technology does not exist. SAF, there's not going to be enough of it for the years to come. So it's very important that the airport does its part to become carbon neutral as quickly as possible, because by 2050 the whole industry has to be carbon neutral, and we have probably the easiest part. So we want to overperform on that and get there as quickly as possible.
Do you think it'll help you attract new routes by having a more carbon neutral facility at the airport?
Well, we're going to, eventually what we're going to be doing is how do we incentivize airlines to take, for example, SAF, sustainable aviation fuel. So we may, what we call eco-modulate our fees to encourage airlines to adopt these reduced carbon footprints and use more efficient engines and all that. But it will play a part. I think it plays a part in our role with the community in attracting people to work at the airport. They want to work at the airport, but they also want us to do our part in sustainability, and that's part of our motto.
Interesting. And Alain, do you want to talk at all about, I know the NCC, I know you're here to talk about the urban plan, but the NCC has been doing some incredible work on energy and sustainability. Be curious to hear what was the motivation, again, to step away from business as usual?
I think there's two motivation. One is we have to. There's targets that we have to meet, and there's a sustainable development strategy that we have to report on, but there's also resiliency and redundancy for government operations, and the opportunity that's provided by the Energy Services Acquisition Program, also known as ESAP, that my colleague Simon Comtois is involved with here, as well as with our colleagues at PSPC, is a great opportunity. That's a system that goes from Tunney's Pasture across downtown, down Lady Grey Drive, across McDonald-Cartier Bridge. It ends up at the former National Printing Bureau in Hull. So that all ties it together and feeds hundreds of buildings.
No, it's an incredible project as well. Last chance for any questions from the floor. One here. I shouldn't say last chance. I know we got, I think, 3 minutes left. So.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to also follow up on the energy and climate theme. In terms of building resiliency, I think that many of us are expecting extreme weather events and serious power outages. So the question is, what kind of backup power systems are we planning for these large visionary projects? Are we starting to look at battery storage technology, or are we going with these diesel and gas backup generators and building mini gas plants?
And maybe I'll start with you, Michael, with the train. What is the resiliency for the train system?
So the Trillium line currently uses a diesel system, unfortunately, but we have bought new Stadler trains that you can convert, and we are following the technology very closely. Stadler just recently did a test in Colorado of one of their trains where they basically were setting a Guinness Book of Record to how far you could travel with a hydrogen-based train, And so they were able to achieve 1,500 kilometers with their hydrogen-based train. So which, if you think about our system, 15 kilometers, 16 kilometers north-south, that's a very good kind of solution for us. And so as an alternative to diesel, to go to hydrogen. But as a kind of a backup to the, we have an electric LRT system. There's resilience that we are putting in terms of going to Hydro Ottawa and saying, for our traction power substations, we need multiple linkages. We've all seen over the last few years with the tornadoes, losing different sectors of the grid. And so what we're doing is we're saying for every substation we have that's powering the train, we need to have 2 independent or diverse connections to the electrical grid, just to provide a little bit more resilience so that if one section goes down, we can turn it back online. Same thing is we can take one of those offline at a time. So there is some redundancy, but in a system-wide outage, unfortunately that train system is not going to run and there's no obvious backup. But certainly for a day-to-day or for isolated outages, we're putting in all the systems to make sure we can keep it running in those instances.
Anyone else want to jump in with your thinking on that?
Yeah, so emergency power for us is pretty critical. So when you take areas like the OR, it's not great when you lose power in the middle of an operative procedure. And so part of our whole building has to be, other than places like finance and HR and that, all the clinical areas have to be 100% redundancy, particularly the trauma unit, the ORs, the ICU, et cetera, and the inpatient units. And so part of this with hydro is, can we get away from using generators? Can you go to cogen units to give you a full feed on the electrical side? So there's a whole thought process around it. I'll tell you the other area that's interesting that is probably we're spending more time on, that we have to have backup plans, is a cyber attack. And so how do you, if you lose your systems for 4 months, you can't be in a situation where we're just going to close the hospital. You got to have a full redundancy. So redundancy is core to what we do as part of this planning from an infrastructure perspective.
Thanks, Cameron. That gives me a lot of comfort for sure. I know you and your team are working hard on that. So I think I can speak on behalf of everybody in this room that all of us wish all of you all of the best with your projects. We wish you Godspeed, bring them in on time, under budget as always. And a big thank you to all of you for your time today to share your vision with us. Thank you.
All right, we're in the final phase of the City Building Summit. So many months of planning, Sue Ling, and to me it just seems to have flown by. We are going to wrap in about 2 minutes, and happy to report that that we're on time. This event has become a unique event. In fact, I'm sitting here in front of Shirley Westeinda. She was interviewed by OBJ and said, "What was your favorite event?" And you said City Building Summit. And Sue Ling and I remarked on that. And we took it seriously, and we thought, what is the potential, of this event? I think it's unique. Today we've talked about our downtowns. Thank you to Mary, our federal leaders, energy transition, youth, housing, major progress. I guess I would want to say, and I'm sure Sue Ling agrees with me, that this event in itself is a work in progress. And we would love to get your input. Should it be shorter? Should it be more? Should it be a double event? Should we break out into sessions and determine kind of the future of our city? But what is certain to me is that the city building work does not end here.